Have you ever wondered how you or your church might respond to the issue of global poverty? In today's episode, we'll discuss how we can help address poverty through a child-focused, community-based model.
Welcome to the Global Missions Podcast, a podcast for Christ followers who want to participate more effectively in God's work both at home and to the ends of the earth. Visit us at globalmissionspodcast.com to find show notes, resources, and previous episodes. Here's your host, Rob Magwood, better known to his friends as Mags.
Hi everyone, we are glad you've joined us again as we continue to discover how to participate in global missions more effectively. I'm your host, Mags, and I am looking forward to this interview. Today we'll be talking about the organization Food for the Hungry and their Poverty Revolution boot camps to help inform and equip churches. Joining us today is their training manager, Melissa Giles. But before we get to this expert interview, we'd like to share with you this mission resource.
As the church, we desire to help people. We have outreach ministries to our communities, hoping to reach out to their spiritual needs, but also their physical and emotional needs. But does our helping ever hurt? If you're wondering how to improve your outreach programs so that they bring dignity and empowerment to those in need, you need to read Helping Without Hurting. Visit our resource page at the Global Missions Podcast to learn more about this insightful book. And now, here's our interview with today's expert guest.
Hi again, everyone. I am pleased to welcome you to today's expert interview. Our guest is Melissa Giles. For those of you that haven't had a chance to meet Melissa, she works as a training manager for Food for the Hungry Canada. She helps run Poverty Revolution boot camps, which are events to help churches and individuals understand how to work with the poor in ways that are both respectful and empowering. Melissa started her career as a teacher, and after a short trip overseas with Samaritan's Purse, she served with them for 5 years in Canada and across Africa and in Haiti. And she has also worked in refugee resettlement in the lower mainland of British Columbia. Melissa, welcome to the program.
Thanks. It's great to be here today with you, Megs.
Great to have you. Before we jump into our interview, I'd just like to ask about a little of your backstory. Tell us briefly how you came to be passionate about poverty alleviation.
Sure. Part of my journey, actually, and where sort of things changed for me in my life is actually during my internship program in Uganda. I think prior to that, I was fairly naive to a lot of what was going on in the world at the global level. And I had an awakening that took place during my time in Uganda. And more specifically, there was a point in my life where after church, I went up into kind of a high spot in the village where I was living. And I was opening my Bible, and I really didn't know where to turn, but I opened to Isaiah and I started reading, and I got to Isaiah 1, verse 16 and 17. And I'll just read it for us. It says, "Wash and make yourselves clean. Take your evil deeds out of my sight. Stop doing wrong." And what really hit me was when I got to verse 17, and it says, "Learn to do right, seek justice, defend the oppressed, take up the cause of the fatherless, and plead the case of the widow." And it just hit me really hard that, this is God's heart, and this is what he asks of us. And so it really made a strong impression on me. I don't know how to live that out. I don't know what that looks like. But it became very clear that if God was concerned about this, then I needed to be concerned about it.
Yeah. I so appreciate you mentioning that it was an internship as well. It's a little bit of a rabbit trail here, but how long were you in Uganda? What did that look like?
It was about a 6-month internship program in total. Some of that involved training in Canada, but majority of that was actually at a field level. And I had a really unique opportunity to be in a remote part of Uganda, close to the Congo border. And it involved working with a water and sanitation project and helping people with both a household water treatment and also community-wide. So we did spring protection during that internship program.
I appreciate you mentioning that and the idea of internship and kind of Yes, it's a short term, but it's a medium term as well. And we're trying to encourage that in positive and healthy ways.
Mm.
6 days or 16 days or even 6 weeks, we understand, and we say that those trips have value, but 6 months is going to give you a different type of exposure. And that plus God's word at work in your heart, evidently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, an internship can be a really powerful experience, especially of that length.
Hmm.
It's a long enough time to take you out of your comfort creature and culture, and actually causes you to ask some really good questions of yourself and your worldview. And it's the right amount of time to bring you out of that, but then bring you back into your home culture if you choose to sort of debrief that and then make decisions about next steps.
Excellent, excellent. What a great word for medium term mission or internships. It's great. So you work for an organization called Food for the Hungry. Uh, it's called Food for the Hungry Canada. Explain to us, is it a Canadian focus or is it an international focus? What does your organization do?
Yeah, it's a great question. We're part of a larger global organization. So back in the late 70s, the organization globally just turned 40 years old.
Hmm.
And so FH Canada is actually an affiliate. So hence the name FH Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're part of a bigger story, a bigger family.
Mm-hmm.
And that involves a global service center in the US, a number of different affiliate offices, and then there are 23 field offices around the world.
Now, I understand the tagline for Food for the Hungry is ending poverty one community at a time. Could you just take a minute, please, and help draw a connection between addressing poverty and communities?
Within Food for the Hungry, we have a way that we like to talk about our work on the field, and that's what we call child-focused community transformation. Food for the Hungry works to transform impoverished communities into healthy, productive places for children to grow. And there are kind of core interventions that work together holistically. So one of those is education. The other is health. We also focus on livelihood. And then the last would be disaster risk reduction. So helping communities to prepare for and minimize disasters or natural disasters so that they can have safe places for their children and for their families.
Mm-hmm.
And all threaded throughout that is a biblical worldview. That's the foundation, and also provides an umbrella for all of the programs as we work with children and families and understanding their value and that they're loved and they're meant to thrive and prosper. So there's a strong connection for us between poverty alleviation and communities as we work with churches, leaders, and families at a community level.
Mm-hmm. Boy, it's important to add some of those things because it could be assumed just from the name of the organization, Food for the Hungry, that it's just about food. But you've described a lot of different investments to help transform communities into healthy places.
Yeah, originally when we started as an organization, there's a gentleman, Dr. Larry Ward, and he was really responding to the crisis in Southeast Asia, as many people were forced onto boats and they were trying to escape. And there was food insecurity, as so many people were suffering from. So Food for the Hungry kind of came out of that place of responding. If there's one child who's starving, can't we serve one child at a time? Mm-hmm. And that's the origin of the name. But if you look at the model now of Food for the Hungry, we're much more community development focused than we are relief focused in a lot of our initiatives.
Okay. Just for those who are listening, I want to remind you that we're taking show notes on this interview with Melissa too. And if you'd like afterwards just to visit our website, we're taking down a lot of these ideas and you don't have to jot them down if you're driving or riding your bike, whatever. You can just go to the website and get these ideas. Melissa, I've heard about these things that you organize called partnership groups, which I understand are between churches in Canada and churches or community overseas. Continuing on that community idea, can you tell us a little bit about these and how they work?
Yeah, sure. Partnerships actually can be primarily we do them in the church, but also we have some great business partners as well. So there's an opportunity. What we do is, if you understand a little bit about Food for the Hungry, you mentioned our tagline in the last question, but our goal also is we walk alongside communities over an 8 to 10 year period of time. And during that process, basically, we invite people from the global north to walk alongside those living in the global south. And so our partnership model creates the opportunity for a connection to take place between these two groups. But our desired goal really is mutual transformation. Our desire is that both groups are changed through the experience. I know traditionally missions has often been molded or should I say advertised as, go and do and help these other people. And yeah, some of that can take place, but what we see happening through our partnership model is that our global north, our Canadian partners are actually being transformed through this experience. They meet people in the field offices, they meet community members, they meet families, they meet leaders, they see their passion, and more importantly, they see God at work. And so I think through these experiences, they have the opportunity to be transformed.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And because it brings honor to God both ways, both parties, if you will, are being blessed and transformed. And what I hear you're saying as well is that there's a significant investment of time, 8 to 10 years.
Yeah, I think that it's something that our leadership has looked at. We've been involved in poverty alleviation or whatever you'd like to title it. There's no quick fix. And so a lot of our model is to actually spend the first 2 years just listening and learning. We have staff that live in the area and move around the area. And as they listen to community members, they're able to discover what are some of the barriers that have prevented people from flourishing. And so without taking that time to listen and learn, they're going to miss what it is that's preventing people from moving forward. And then from that phase, they go into more of an action oriented kind of phase where they begin to address some of those barriers, equipping churches, working with leaders, and helping families to be healthier.
I wonder if you could share with us a story that would help illustrate how the partnerships that you've helped establish are bearing fruit.
Sure. The first example that pops into my mind actually is a church from North Vancouver called Capilano Community Church. And they've actually been one of our longer term church partners, and they've built a community partnership in Uganda. And it's just been so fascinating to see this group of people in this church who have come around or collected around this core idea of walking alongside another community. And they've made it a central focus of their church. And they've sent number of different teams from year to year that have been able to engage. And we've had people come from the field office here to Canada to speak to the larger congregation. And that church community has been really changed through their engagement. If you talk to individuals and you hear their story about how God has sort of transformed their thinking from the beginning, where they thought they would, be about going and doing and helping and providing all the solutions. And now they see, as they walk alongside this community, they really talk about it in a very relational way. They talk about community members that they've met. They talk about individuals that they've been able to see from year to year and the change that's happened in the community. And not too long ago, that many members of the church actually got to go over and they got to take part in what we call our graduation ceremony, which at the end of our 8 to 10 year relationship, we have a party. We want to celebrate all that the community has accomplished. And we love our partners to be part of that. And so it was an opportunity for people from Cap Church to go and to be there with the community as they celebrated all that's been accomplished in the last 10 years.
So they had the opportunity to send people multiple times to the same place, or a local, maybe it was a collective of places, but in the same region, and they could start to see the accumulated value of investing there.
For sure. And they've actually been in the same community over that 8 to 10 years. And when the community that they had initially, agreed to walk alongside graduated, they actually then, as the work expanded into neighboring communities, then they also shifted, and now they're beginning a new relationship, and they're beginning a new partnership in a community that's not very far geographically from the original one that they partnered.
Well, we're going to ask for your contact information and how churches and individuals can learn more about this later. But But I would like to ask, do churches apply to be part of certain projects that you're undertaking? Do you keep that up on a website so that it can be explored by a church or individual or business partner?
Yeah, the best place to go is our website, which is, of course, is www.fhcanada.org. And then there are ways that you can find out on there, and there's buttons and tabs where you can look up our partnership
Sure.
opportunities.
I wonder, is there an average size of church? Does a church need to be a certain size before they can begin to partner together with you, or can it work for smaller churches too?
I love the model because we have a couple of core components. Like we often encourage our partners to take the boot camp as a first step, because if we don't align on some of those core values, then probably both groups are not going to have a very effective partnership. It probably won't work. And from there, they go into a vision trip, and then it springs forth into the partnership. And we work with all sizes of churches. We don't have something prescriptive as far as a number of people that have to go, or number of child sponsors that have to be sponsored, or money raised. We actually have a gentleman, Grant Sipe, who is our community partnerships liaison, and he works with churches to say, okay, let's do this together, and what is palatable for your group.
Very good. Now, there's also something I'm looking forward to asking about this. Part of your role at Food for the Hungry involves something called Poverty Revolution Boot Camps. Can you please tell us a little bit about what these are?
Sure. This is something I'm super passionate about because it's an area that I've been involved in directly for the last 4.5 years since I came to Food for the Hungry. Education has always been a key part of what Food for the Hungry does. Even if you look at the work that goes on at the field level, a primary focus is education. When I came to Food for the Hungry, there was great material. But I was able to take my teacher background and create a very interactive weekend workshop. And so the boot camp takes place over a Friday evening from 6 to 9, and then Saturday from 9 to 4. And we basically look at assumptions of poverty, and then we begin to look at it from a biblical worldview and begin to rebuild or reframe things for people. But I've always said that we come in as facilitators. We don't come in as experts. Our idea over the weekend is to get people working in small groups, to have dialogue, to use videos and object lessons, Bible verses, and really begin to dig into this and unpack and then discover it together.
And what kind of impact are you seeing that these boot camps are having on Canadians and on Canadian churches?
Well, the great thing is that we're a few years into it, so we can get feedback from others now. We run on average about 15 to 20 events a year. And so what we're hearing from churches is just a huge appreciation for the resource that it's become. As a nonprofit or an NGO, we're coming in with a resource rather than just asking for resources.
Yeah.
And so they're really appreciating that. I know individually I stay in contact with many who have come through the boot camp, and this is why I love being a teacher and why I love facilitating this, is you get to see an aha moment for many people where they look at how they've been viewing the world, they've been viewing poverty, and something just begins to shift and they begin to see it in a new light. And so I know it's having an impact personally on the way people are looking and thinking about poverty. And then these groups are collectively together. So it's connecting people within a community who may not have known prior to that they had similar interests. And so even collectively, now you've got a network of people in your own community who you can reconnect with after the event to talk more about these issues.
I wonder if you could share with us an example of some of the fruit that you've seen coming out of the boot camps.
Two things, actually. It's actually been quite transformative for myself as a facilitator. And it sounds odd to say, but I lived internationally for many years, and I often had a difficult time translating my experience and what I had gone through to people in North America. I didn't quite have the words. And so quite fascinatingly, through the boot camp, I've been able to actually live that out with people. So it's been really neat. But as far as individuals, I love it. I get emails from people far along after they've participated in the boot camp, and I'm wondering what has really been the impact. I'll get an email from somebody and they'll say, I just wanted to write you and thank you. That weekend helped just begin a process in me in which I was able to change the thinking about how I saw poverty, how I saw people in my community that were vulnerable, and how I saw people in the global community as well. I think of Luke from the Edmonton area, and he was a young gentleman, teenager, that was going on a church partnership trip, and he was going to go visit the community for the first time. And I remember him coming to boot camp, and he was quite quiet throughout the weekend. But when Luke came back, so the combination of the boot camp training and then going and seeing and experiencing, listening and learning, I remember hearing from him after about the change that took place in him. And he was so inspired or so convicted maybe of what was happening globally. He said, I can't come back to my local community and not get involved as well. And so he began to volunteer at a local shelter. And that to me is a powerful story of how the local and the global can all work together in a wonderful way.
Absolutely. And wonderful that it also is touching the hearts and lives of young people. There's no particular age where you're old enough to start into this, but it can be valid in the lives of our young people too.
Definitely.
If a church wanted to consider hosting a boot camp, what would be the steps that they would take to look into that further?
So the best thing is probably to have individuals email me, which would be education@fhcanada.org. They could also call me. Our toll-free number is 1-800-667-0605, and they can ask for me, Melissa. And if they wanted to check out more on the website before a call or before an email, they could use that email address, which is fhcanada.org/bootcamp. And there's some information with a promo video as well that gives an idea of what the weekend looks like.
Super. Well, if our listeners want to learn more about Food for the Hungry or possibly one of the partnerships or Poverty Revolution Bootcamp, please just tell us the website again and how they can get in touch with you.
So the website is www.fhcanada.org. And from there, you can explore and find information about, there's a tab there for boot camps and for partnerships and all kinds of things. We also have a Twitter. If you're a Twitter, if you like to follow that, we're at FH Canada. And we actually also have a blog, which is blog.fhcanada.org. Those would be great ways for people to connect with us.
Very good. We'll put all of that in the show notes. And Melissa, I just want to say a big thank you. I know that we've just barely scratched the surface here, but thanks for spending the time for our listeners to help us understand about Food for the Hungry and some practical ways that they can get involved in serving the Lord in this way.
Thanks for having me. It's been wonderful to be able to spend some time with you, and I hope listeners will contact me and be able to get in touch. So thanks for this opportunity.
We hope you found today's interview to be both informative and inspiring. If you missed anything or would like to check out the resources or links mentioned during the interview, you can find the show notes we've prepared at our website, globalmissionspodcast.com. You can also use the website or our Facebook page to suggest a particular topic or expert you'd like to hear featured on this program. The Global Missions Podcast is co-sponsored by the Jaffrey Centre for Global Initiatives and Send International of Canada. Thanks for listening in. I'm your host, Mags, and I invite you to join us again in 2 weeks when we'll continue to explore this grand adventure of being Christ's witnesses to the ends of the earth.